Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaya Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriya Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So continuing with this Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, chapters. Today we're starting new chapter, chapter number 9, the supreme character of Jad Bharat. Text number 1 and 2 onwards. So we'll go to the translation. Srila Shukdev Goswami continued, My dear king, after giving up the body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj took birth in a very pure Brahman family. There was a Brahman who belonged to the dynasty of Angira. He was fully qualified with Brahminical qualifications. He could control his mind and senses. And he had studied the Vedic literatures and other subsidiary literatures. He was expert in giving charity, and he was always satisfied, tolerant, very gentle, learned, and non-envious. He was self-realized and engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He remained always in a trance. He had 9 equally qualified sons by his first wife, and by his second wife, he begot twins, a brother and a sister, of which the male child was said to be the topmost devotee and foremost of saintly kings, Bharat Maharaj. This then is the story of the birth he took after giving up the body of a deer. So he took the birth in this Brahminical family, and then his father was a great Brahmin and great devotee, and 2 wives from the second wife he took. He was the brother and of a twin sister, and this is what happened after the body of the deer. Bharat Maharaj was a great devotee, but he did not attain success in one life. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that a devotee who does not fulfill his devotional duties in one life is given the chance to be born in a fully qualified Brahmin family or a rich Kshatriya or Vaishya family. Shuchinam Shimatam Gehe. Bharat Maharaj was the firstborn son of Maharaj Rishabh in a rich Kshatriya family. But due to his willful negligence of his spiritual duties and his excessive attachment to an insignificant deer, he was obliged to take birth as a son of a deer. However, due to his strong position as a devotee, he was gifted with the remembrance of his past life as Bharat Maharaj. And let me just being repentant, he remained in a solitary forest and always thought of Krishna. Then he was given the chance to take birth in a very good Brahman family. So as a deer, he was repentant and he always remained in a solitary forest and always was visiting the ashrams of the sages. And now he got a chance to be born in a Brahman family. Text number 3. Due to his especially gifted with the Lord's mercy, Bharat Maharaj could remember the incidents of his past life. Although he received the body of a Brahman, he was still very much afraid of his relatives and friends who were not devotees. He was always very cautious of such association because he feared that he would fall down again. Consequently, he manifested himself before the public eye as a madman, dull, blind, and deaf, so that others would not try to talk to him. In this way, he saved himself from bad association. Within he was always thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord and chanting the glories of the Lord, which save one from the bondage of fruitive action. In this way, he saved himself from the onslaught of non-devotee association. So outwardly, he acted as a dumb, as a blind, and a deaf, like a jada. Jada means like a rock, like a stone, who doesn't know anything. But inwardly, he was always constantly thinking of the Lord and thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord and chanting the Lord's glories. Every living entity is bound by different activities due to the association with the modes of nature. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Karanam Gunasangavasya. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. We get different types of bodies among 8,400,000 species according to our karma. We work under the influence of material nature contaminated by the three modes. And thus we get a certain type of body according to superior order. This is called karma bandha. To get out of this karma bandha, one must engage himself in devotion service. Then one will not be affected by the modes of material nature. So one who engages in full devotion service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. To remain immune from the material qualities, one must engage himself in devotion service. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. That is the perfection of life. When Maharaj Bharat took birth as a Brahman, he was not very interested in the duties of a Brahman. But within he remained a pure Vaishnava, always thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord. As advised in Bhagavad Gita, Man Mana Bhav Bhakta. This is the only process by which one can be saved from the danger of repeated birth and death. So he was always constantly meditating on the Lord and his pastimes and chanting his glories inside. So that his point was he didn't want to get entangled again. Text number 4. The Brahman's father's mind was always filled with affection for his son, Jad Bharat. Therefore, he was always attached to Jad Bharat. Because Jad Bharat was unfit to enter the Grihastha ashram, he simply executed the purificatory process up to the end of Brahmacharya ashram. Although Jad Bharat was unwilling to accept his father's instructions, the Brahman nonetheless instructed him in how to keep clean, how to wash, thinking that the son should be taught by the father. Jad Bharat was Bharat Maharaj in the body of a Brahman, and he outwardly conducted himself as if he were dull, deaf, dumb, and blind. Actually, he was quite alert within. He knew perfectly well of the results of fruitive activity and the results of devotional service. In the body of a Brahman, Maharaj Bharat was completely absorbed in devotional service within. Therefore, it was not at all necessary for him to execute the regulative principles of fruitive activity. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Svanishtitasya Dharmasya, one has to satisfy Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the perfection of the regulative principles of fruitive activity. Besides that, it is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Dharma Svanishtita Pumsam. Duties, dharma, executed by men, regardless of occupation, are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These karma-kanda activities are required as long as one has not developed Krishna consciousness. If one is developed in Krishna consciousness, there is no need to execute the prior regulative principles of karma-kanda. But his father was a Brahman, and he wanted this youngest son to learn everything properly, how to keep himself clean, how to behave. But Jad Bharat, of course, Prabhupada is saying here that he was way beyond all these rules and regulations. But outwardly he was acting like he doesn't understand anything. So both ways he was not ready to learn anything from his father. But father being father, he loved his youngest son, and he wanted him to teach, wanted him to learn. Srila Madhavendra Puri said, "Oh, regulative principles of karma, please excuse me. I cannot follow all these regulative principles, for I am fully engaged in devotion service. He expressed the desire to sit somewhere beneath a tree and continue chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Consequently, he did not execute all the regulative principles. Similarly, Hardas Thakur was born in a Mohammedan family. From the very beginning of his life, he was never trained in the Karma Kanda system. But because he was always chanting the holy names of the Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted him as Namacharya, the authority in chanting the holy name. As Jad Bharat Maharaj was always engaged in devotional service within his mind. Since he had executed the regulative principles continuously for 3 lives, he was not interested in continuing to execute them, although his Brahmin father wanted him to do so. So the regulative principles, they are there for people like us who were trying to make some progress. So in the process, if we don't follow, then it just creates disturbance in the society. And also we don't make progress properly. But for a person like Jad Bharat, who was already on that level of bhav, bhakti as Bharat Maharaj, before he fell down, and Jad Bharat was from his birth or maybe young age, he was always absorbed, so he didn't have to do all this. But still, this case is exceptional because devotees like Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and all the 6 Goswamis, other acharyas, they followed everything because they wanted to set a proper example in front of the society for everybody else to follow properly. So their aim was to preach. So they had to set a proper example. So, but in case of Jad Bharat, because he wanted to act like a really dumb person who doesn't know anything, because he wanted people to leave him alone. So he acted like that. Just like Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, who was the spiritual master of Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj. He also acted like he didn't know or he didn't properly follow everything. But he was person or devotee of such a caliber that Bhakti Vinod Thakur told his son Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj to go take Diksha from him only, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Although Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, from outward sense, he was not even literate. He could not even read or write his name. And he would chant in a latrine. He would take his beads in a latrine and chant over there so that people won't disturb him. We cannot follow him. We cannot imitate him. So we have to follow the regulative principles properly. And then slowly we make progress. Text 5. Jad Bharat behaved before his father like a fool, despite his father's adequately instructing him in Vedic knowledge. He behaved in that way so that his father would know that he was unfit for instruction and would abandon the attempt to instruct him further. He would behave in a completely opposite way. Although instructed to wash his hands after evacuating, he would wash them before. Nonetheless, his father wanted to give him Vedic instructions during the spring and summer. He tried to teach him the Gayatri Mantra along with Omkar and Vyahriti. But after 4 months, his father still was not successful in instructing him. So this, because he himself didn't want to learn. That was the problem. Text 6. The Brahman father of Jad Bharat considered his son his heart and soul, and therefore he was very much attached to him. He thought it wise to educate his son properly, and being absorbed in his unsuccessful behavior, he tried to teach his son the rules and regulations of brahmacharya, including the execution of Vedic vows, cleanliness, study of the Vedas, the regulative methods, service to the spiritual master, and the method of offering a fire sacrifice. He tried his best to teach his son in this way, but all his endeavors failed. In his heart, he hoped that his son would be a learned scholar, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. Like everyone, this Brahman was attached to his home, and he had forgotten that someday he would die. Death, however, was not forgetful. At the proper time, death appeared and took him away. So Brahman, the father of Jad Bharat, he tried to teach him everything, but he failed because Jad Bharat didn't want to learn. But like any father, he was really attached to his son. But this attachment to his son, who was a Paramhansa on that level, really that was really good because that would take him back home. Those two attached to family life who forget that death comes in the future to take them away become attached and unable to finish their duty as human beings. The duty of human life is to solve all the problems of life, but instead, people remain attached to family affairs and duties. Although they forget death, death will not forget them. Suddenly, they'll be kicked off the platform of a peaceful family life. One may forget that he has to die, but death never forgets. Death always comes at the right time. The Brahman father of Jad Bharat wanted to teach his son the process of brahmacharya, but he was unsuccessful due to his son's unwillingness to undergo the process of Vedic advancement. Jad Bharat was simply concerned with returning home back to Godhead by executing devotion service through Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. He did not care for the Vedic instructions of his father. When one is fully interested in the service of the Lord, he does not need to follow all the regulative principles enunciated in the Vedas. Of course, for an ordinary man, the Vedic principles are imperative. No one can avoid them. But when one has attained the perfection of devotion service, it is not very important to follow the Vedic principles. Lord Krishna advised Arjuna to ascend to the platform of Nistraya Gunya, the transcendental position above the Vedic principles. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and free from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So although his father tried to teach him, and in the process even forgot that death is going to come soon, but death came nevertheless and took him away. But a Brahman, a father or a person in whose house a son like Jad Bharat had taken birth, cannot be an ordinary Brahman. Cannot. And definitely he got the mercy of the Lord to have a son like Jad Bharat. Text 7. Ath yaviyasi dvijasati svagarbha jatam mithunam sapatneya upaniyasya swayam anusasthaya patilokam magat. Thereafter the Brahman's younger wife, after entrusting her twin children, the boy and girl, to the elder wife, departed for Patiloka, voluntarily dying with her husband. Means she became Sati. Text 8. After the father died, the 9 step-brothers of Jad Bharat, who considered Jad Bharat dull and brainless, abandoned the father's attempt to give Jad Bharat a complete education. The stepbrothers of Jadbharat were learned in the three Vedas, the Rig Veda, Samveda, and Yajurveda, which very much encourage fruitive activity. The nine brothers were not at all spiritually enlightened in devotion service to the Lord. Consequently, they could not understand the highly exalted position of Jadbharat. So to understand the highly advanced or exalted position of a devotee is not easy, not at all easy. One has to be at that position to understand any other devotee. Text 9 and 10. Degraded men are actually no better than animals. The only difference is that animals have 4 legs, and such men have only 2. These 2-legged animalistic men used to call Jadbharat mad, dull, deaf, and dumb. They mistreated him, and Jadbharat behaved for them like a madman who was deaf, blind, or dull. He did not protest or try to convince them that he was not so. If others wanted him to do something, he acted according to their desires. Whatever food he could acquire by begging or by wages, and whatever came of its own accord, be it a small quantity, palatable, stale, or tasteless, he would accept and eat. He never ate anything for sense gratification because he was already liberated from the bodily conception, which induces one to accept palatable or unpalatable food. He was full in the transcendental consciousness of devotional service, and therefore he was unaffected by the dualities arising from the bodily conception. Actually, his body was as strong as a bull's, and his limbs were very muscular. He didn't care for winter or summer or wind or rain, and he never covered his body at any time. He lay on the ground and never smeared oil on his body or took a bath. Because his body was dirty, his spiritual effulgence and knowledge were covered, just as the splendor of a valuable gem is covered by dirt. He only wore a dirty loincloth and a sacred thread, which was blackish. Understanding that he was born in a Brahmin family, people would call him a Brahma Bandhu and other names. Being thus insulted and neglected by materialistic people, he wandered here and there. So just like Maharaj Rishabdev, he was acting like a dull man, and he did not care for his body, to take care of his body. He didn't care at all. Whatever he got, he just ate. Whatever he could acquire by begging or by wages or whatever came of its own accord, he just ate. So, but inside, within, he was always meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord and chanting his name and glories. So many times we see so many people, especially in India, we'll see so many people on the street and lying down and begging and dirty, but they are not devotees. They are in mode of ignorance. Jadbharat was beyond even the mode of goodness. He was in a transcendental situation. So from outwardly, both of them look the same. So one has to have the eyes to see a proper sadhu. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Deha Smriti Nahi Yaar Sansara Bandhan Kahatar. One who has no desire to maintain the body or who is not anxious to keep the body in order, who is satisfied in any condition, must be either mad or liberated. Actually, Bharat Maharaj in his birth as Jadbharat was completely liberated from material dualities. He was a Paramhansa and therefore did not care for bodily comfort. So that was the position. Text 11. Jadbharat used to work only for food. His stepbrothers took advantage of this and engaged him in agricultural field work in exchange for some food. But actually, he did not know how to work very well in the field. He did not know where to spread dirt or where to make the ground level or uneven. His brothers used to give him broken rice, oil cakes, and chaff or rice, worm-eaten grains, and burnt grains that had stuck to the pot. But he gladly accepted all this as if it was nectar. He did not hold any grudges and ate all this very gladly. Wow. And we get so offended and so angry if our wife doesn't cook food properly, and if we don't get food in the temple, prasadam in the temple properly, and we are very happy if we're getting nice paneer and other dishes. Otherwise, we get so angry. So, well, we are at such a beginning stage, but this is the ideal. The platform of Paramhansa is described in Bhagavad Gita, sam dukkha sukham dhiram swam ritattvaya kalpate. When one is callous to all duality, the happiness and distress of this material world, one is fit for Amritattva, eternal life. Bharat Maharaj was determined to finish his business in this material world, and he did not at all care for the world of duality. He was complete in Krishna consciousness and was oblivious to good and evil, happiness and distress. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Dvaite Bhadra Bhadra Gyan Sab Mano Dharma, Ei Bhala Ei Manda Sab Brahma. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad are all mental speculations. Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. One has to understand that in the material world of duality, to think that this is good and this is bad is simply a mental concoction. However, one should not imitate this consciousness. One should actually be situated on the spiritual platform of neutrality. It's very, very difficult and very rare to find such a person. Text 12. At kadachit kashit vrishal patir bhadra kalya purusha pashu mala bhata patya kamaha. At this time, being desirous of obtaining a son, a leader of dacoits who came from a Shudra family, wanted to worship the goddess Bhadrakali by offering her in sacrifice a dull man who is considered no better than an animal. Low-class men such as Shudras worship demigods like goddess Kali or Bhadrakali for the fulfillment of material desires. To this end, they sometimes kill a human being before the deity. They generally choose a person who's not very intelligent, in other words, an animal in the shape of a man. So they wanted to sacrifice a dull man. Text 30. The leader of the dacoits captured a man animal for sacrifice, but he escaped. Well, everybody wants to save their life. This is eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Everybody wants to do. And the leader ordered his followers to find him. They ran in different directions, but could not find him. Wandering here and there in the middle of the night, covered by dense darkness, they came to a paddy field where they saw the exalted son of the Angira family, Jad Bharat, who was sitting in an elevated place guarding the field against the attacks of deer and wild pigs. So they came to the paddy field where Jad Bharat was sitting on this machan, elevated place. Text 14. The followers and servants of the dacoit chief considered Jad Bharat to possess qualities quite suitable for a man animal, and they decided that he was a perfect choice for sacrifice. Their faces bright with happiness because they thought they can please their leader. They bound him up with ropes and brought him to the temple of the goddess Kali. In some parts of India, animalistic men are still sacrificed before the goddess Kali. However, such a sacrifice is only performed by Shudras and dacoits. Their business is to plunder the wealthy and to become successful. They offer an animalistic man before the goddess Kali. It should be noted that they never sacrifice an intelligent man before the goddess. In the body of a Brahman, Bharat Maharaj appeared deaf and dumb. Yet he was the most intelligent man in the world. Nonetheless, being completely surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he remained in that condition and did not protest being brought before the deity for slaughter. So he did not protest at all. He did not even defend himself. He said, okay, you just take me for the sacrifice, no problem. As we have learned from the previous verses, he was very strong and could have easily avoided being bound with the ropes, but he did not do anything. He simply depended on the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his protection. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes surrender unto the Supreme Lord in this way. Mara bhi rakha bhi jo ichha tohar, nitya dasa prati tua adhikar. My Lord, I am now surrendered unto you. I am your eternal servant. And if you like, you can kill me, or if you like, you can protect me. In any case, I am fully surrendered unto you. So that was the mood of Jad Bharat. And for such a surrendered devotee, of course, Krishna will always protect. Text 15. After this, all the thieves, according to the imaginative ritual for killing animalistic men, bathed Jad Bharat, dressed him in new clothes, decorated him with ornaments befitting an animal, smeared his body with scented oils, and decorated him with tilak, sandalwood pulp, and garlands. They fed him sumptuously, and then brought him before the goddess Kali, offering her incense, lamps, garlands, parched grain, newly grown twigs, sprouts, fruits, and flowers. In this way, they worshipped the deity before killing the man animal, and they vibrated songs and prayers and played drums and bugles. Jad Bharat was then made to sit down before the deity. So they had their own imaginative ritual. It was not mentioned in any scriptures. In this verse, the word swavidhina, according to their own ritualistic principles, is very significant. According to the Vedic Shastras, everything must be done according to regulative principles. But here it is stated that the thieves and rogues devised their own process for killing an animalistic man. The Tamasic Shastras give instructions for the sacrifice of an animal like a goat or buffalo before the goddess Kali, but there is no mention of killing a man, however dull he may be. This process was manufactured by the dacoits themselves. Therefore, the word swavidhina is used. Even at this time, there are many sacrifices being conducted without reference to the Vedic scriptures. For instance, in Calcutta, recently a slaughterhouse was being advertised as a temple for the goddess of the goddess Kali. Meat eaters foolishly purchase meat from such shops, thinking it different from ordinary meat and taking it to be the prasad of goddess Kali. The sacrifice of goat or a similar animal before the goddess Kali is mentioned in Shastras, just to keep people from eating slaughterhouse meat and becoming responsible for the killing of animals. The conditioned soul has a natural tendency towards sex and meat eating. Consequently, the Shastras grant them some concessions. Actually, the Shastras aim at putting an end to these abominable activities, but they impart some regulative principles so that gradually meat eaters and sex hunters will be rectified. So it's not like one size fits all. Depending upon somebody's mode of nature, whichever is predominant, he will act accordingly. And to bring them gradually, bring the people in the mode of ignorance gradually to the mode of goodness, the injunctions are there. So goat or a similar lower animal, not a cow and definitely not a human being, can be sacrificed to goddess Kali, not just every day or any day, only on the new moon day, Amavasya. And then that meat can be eaten by that person who has sacrificed the animal. So many injunctions or restrictions are there, so that the person slowly understands that there's somebody higher and some other regulations are there. So I better follow properly the scriptures. And also Prabhupada has mentioned other place that Kali is expansion of Durga, and Durga is a Vaishnavi, so she does not accept these offerings, the meat. She doesn't eat meat. So the meat is taken by her followers who are ghosts and those kind of people. So the meat eaters, they only get ghost prasad. Text 16. At this time, one of the thieves acting as a chief priest was ready to offer the blood of Jad Bharat, whom they imagined to be an animal man, to the goddess Kali to drink as liquor. He therefore took up a very fearsome sword, which was very sharp, and consecrating it by the mantra of Bhadra Kali, raised it to kill Jad Bharat. Text 17. All the rogues and thieves who had made arrangements for the worship of goddess Kali were low-minded and bound to the modes of passion and ignorance. They were overpowered by the desire to become very rich. Therefore, they had the audacity to disobey the injunctions of the Vedas, so much so that they were prepared to kill Jad Bharat, a self-realized soul born in a Brahmin family. Due to their envy, these dacoits brought him before the goddess Kali for sacrifice. Such people are always addicted to envious activities, and therefore they dared to try to kill Jad Bharat. Jad Bharat was the best friend of all living entities. He was no one's enemy, and he was always absorbed in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was born of a good Brahmin father, and killing him was forbidden, even though he might have been an enemy or aggressive person. In any case, there was no reason to kill Jad Bharat, and the goddess Kali could not bear this. She could immediately understand that these sinful dacoits are about to kill a great devotee of the Lord. So, the deity is not just a murti, it's a person. So she was there and she could understand these are foolish dacoits. So suddenly the deity's body burst asunder, and the goddess Kali personally emerged from it in a body burning with an intense and intolerable effulgence. According to the Vedic injunctions, only an aggressor can be killed. If a person comes with an intent to kill, one can immediately take action and kill in self-defense. It's also stated that one can be killed if it comes to set fire to the home or to pollute or kidnap one's wife. Lord Ramchandra killed the entire family of Ravan because Ravan kidnapped his wife, Sita Devi. However, killing is not sanctioned in the Shastras for other purposes. The killing of animals in sacrifice to the demigods or expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sanctioned for those who eat meat. This is a kind of restriction for meat eating. In other words, the slaughter of animals is also restricted by certain rules and regulations in the Vedas. Considering these points, there was no reason to kill Jad Bharat, who was born in a respectable, highly exalted Brahmin family. He was a God-realized soul and a well-wisher to all living entities. The Vedas did not at all sanction the killing of Jad Bharat by rogues and thieves. Consequently, the goddess Bhadrakali emerged from the deity to give protection to the Lord's devotee. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that due to the Brahman effulgence of such a devotee as Jad Bharat, the deity was fractured. So we saw in the shloka how the deity burst open and goddess Kali personally came out. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says it was because of the Brahman effulgence, because of the effulgence of the body of Jad Bharat, the deity was fractured. Only thieves and rogues in the modes of passion and ignorance and maddened by material opulence offer a man in sacrifice before the goddess Kali. This is not sanctioned by the Vedic instructions. Presently, there are many hundreds and thousands of slaughterhouses throughout the world that are maintained by a puffed up population mad for material opulence. Such activities are never supported by the Bhagavad school. So many things are going on, and but this is all nonsense. And because of this wholesale slaughter of animals, we are getting punished, actually. The nature is going to punish, nature is punishing us and will continue to punish us if we don't stop this nonsense slaughter of animals. And that too just for the taste of the tongue. Nonsense. But here Goddess Kali herself came out and to save Jad Bharat. Just imagine how the exalted position of Jad Bharat, what it must be. Text 18. Intolerant of the offenses committed, the infuriated Goddess Kali flashed her eyes and displayed her fierce curved teeth. Her reddish eyes glowed, and she displayed her fearsome features. She assumed a frightening body as if she were prepared to destroy the entire creation. Leaping violently from the altar, she immediately decapitated all the rogues and thieves with the very sword with which they had intended to kill Jad Bharat. She then began to drink hot blood that flowed from the necks of the beheaded rogues and thieves, as if the blood were liquor. Indeed, she drank this intoxicant with her associates, who were witches and female demons. Becoming intoxicated with this blood, they all began to sing very loudly and dance as though prepared to annihilate the entire universe. At the same time, they began to play with the heads of the rogues and thieves, tossing them about as if they were balls. Wow, can't even imagine that scene, what that scene must be. It is evident from this verse that the devotees of Goddess Kali are not at all favored by her. It is Goddess Kali's work to kill and punish the demons. Goddess Kali or Durga engages in decapitating many demons, in cutting their heads off, dacoits and other unwanted elements in the society. Neglecting Krishna consciousness, foolish people try to satisfy the goddess by offering her many abominable things. But ultimately, when there is a little discrepancy in this worship, the goddess punishes the worshipper by taking his life. Demoniac people worship Goddess Kali to obtain some material benefit, but they are not excused of the sins performed in the name of worship. To sacrifice a man or animal before the deity is specifically forbidden. So these thieves and the dacoits who try to sacrifice Jad Bharat before Goddess Kali. So because Prabhupada explained how a devotee is always protected by Krishna, and Goddess Kali is a devotee of Krishna, she could not tolerate these rascals that try to kill Jad Bharat, sacrifice Jad Bharat in front of her. So she appeared along with her associates, witches and demons, and she just took that same chopper and she killed, and they killed all the rogues and thieves. Very ghastly scene, we can only imagine. So also many times or sometimes, I mean, people try to do some black magic on devotees or do some other nonsensical things on devotees, try to harm them somehow, physically, financially, or in other ways. But just like Okay, here Jad Bharat, very, very exalted devotee, Paramhansa, he was he was saved right away. But there could be devotees who are just neophytes, just trying to start on the process. But even then, if we commit a single offense against them, it can be very, very detrimental to our lives, our opulence, our health, or anything. We got to be very careful, very, very careful. So, Prabhupada saying, but they are not excused of the sins performed in the name of worship. Text 19. When an envious person commits an offense before a great personality, he is always punished in the way mentioned above. Text 20. Shukdev Goswami then said to Maharaj Parikshit, O Vishnu Datta, those who already know that the soul is separate from the body, who are liberated from the invincible knot in the heart, who are always engaged in welfare activities for all living entities, and who never contemplate harming anyone, are always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who carries his disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, and acts as supreme time to kill the demons and protect his devotees. The devotees always take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, at all times, even if threatened by decapitation, they remain unagitated. For them, this is not at all wonderful. So this is the full surrender of the devotees. This is what makes them so dear to Krishna, that he's just ready to protect them. And his Sudarshan Chakra is always ready to protect these devotees. Always. All we have to do is just take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord and now become always non-envious, always thinking of the welfare for all the others, always engage in welfare activities for others. And the best welfare activity is to bring others to the process of Krishna consciousness, to the process of bhakti. And without, who never contemplate harming anyone. They haven't even think of harming anyone. Then those kind of devotees are always protected by Krishna. So this is the most wonderful way to live our lives. These are some of the great qualities of a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. First, a devotee is firmly convinced of his spiritual identity. He never identifies with the body. He is firmly convinced that the spirit soul is different from the body. Consequently, he fears nothing. Even though his life may be threatened, he is not at all afraid. He does not even treat an enemy like an enemy. Such are the qualifications of devotees. Devotees are always fully dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Lord is always eager to give them all protection in all circumstances. And that is why Krishna told Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, you declare it boldly, Name Bhakta Pranashyati. My devotee never, never, never perishes. I'm always there to protect him. So sometimes we see, okay, devotee never perishes doesn't mean he's not going to die. He will die. Sometimes they get killed also, like Abhimanyu himself was killed. Or now all these cows that are being slaughtered all over the world. Now Krishna, look at the picture behind me. Krishna is very fond of cows. He wants to always protect his cows. But so many cows are being slaughtered. So for whatever reason they are being slaughtered, but one thing for sure, they will definitely pay for their crimes. Definitely. So thus ends the 9th chapter, Krishna's Mercy. We completed the whole chapter in one session. So tomorrow we'll start the 10th chapter. See anybody has any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, one takeaway from this whole the one chapter is that a detachment from the material world and detachment from the material people, like what Jal Bharat showed, you know, being act like a mad person and so many things. But the problem, complication here is, Prabhu, that we do not have that heightened state of consciousness, and we are not like devotee as Jal Bharat hai. So if we act like that, we may face a lot of problems, because then people say this is he is a egoistic person and he doesn't talk to anyone or something like that. But it's a lesson, I think.
See, of course, that's the stage of Paramhansa. We are not going to imitate that. No imitation. Never. So we have to increase our attachment to Krishna, and at the same time, we have to preach. Preaching is our main duty. Not to run away from people, but inside we can be detached, but at the same time, we have to preach. That is our main focus.
Correct, Prabhuji. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mata.
Prabhuji, abhi we just started this process of bhakti or puja, matlab Krishna se attachment and all. अभी ही थोड़े से टाइम में ही people are starting calling us boring and बेकार लोग हैं and ये है वो है. So just thinking of जड़ भारत, definitely उन्होंने जो भी किया है it's amazing. मतलब जैसे भी वो रहे हैं it's amazing. हम लोग तो अभी भी पूरी तरह से संसार में हैं, थोड़ा सा अपने को अलग करने की कभी-कभी कोशिश करते हैं. So you know we get declared as a boring person.
Yeah.
So है ना, मतलब I'm just connecting with Vinay Prabhu ji's this thing कि हम लोग अगर थोड़ा सा भी अगर अपने को करने की कोशिश करते हैं तो हमको ये सब टाइटल्स मिलने शुरू हो जाते हैं. तो थिंक अबाउट इट कि जड़ भारत के लिए जो है, जो भी उन्होंने किया, तो लोग अगर उनको इस तरह से समझ रहे हैं कि वो बुद्धू हैं, बेवकूफ है, सो इट्स क्वाइट दिस थिंग. मेरे ख्याल से काफी नेचुरल है ये लोगों का रिएक्शन.
हाँ, वो तो
है ना?
रहेगा. और फिर
रहेगा.
secondly, he himself was acting like that.
हाँ.
He didn't want to learn anything that his father tried to teach him. He himself was acting like that. But in our case, what happens? Yes, in the beginning, people will ridicule us, people will make fun, but slowly, they will respect a person who's spiritually advanced. If we make sure we stick to our path, and then I have seen that myself. If there is any problem with them, and everybody has problems, they'll come to us. Because then they have developed faith that this person is not going to cheat. He's just a spiritual person. He's not going to cheat me or give me wrong advice. So then they come. So just stick to the path. And but be nice to everybody. Just be nice. Be friendly, be nice.
Yes, Prabhuji.
But at the same time, we don't have to take up their way of life, like movies and this parties or this or that. That's what we have to take.
प्रभुजी वो अपने आप इंटरेस्ट खत्म हो जाता है, मन नहीं करता देखने का.
Yep.
You don't enjoy in parties and movies. You feel like क्या wasting time. This is I think मतलब मेरे अंदर तो थोड़ा से आने शुरू हो गया कि I don't enjoy now the parties and all. I used to be a party person and Now I don't.
True.
Mm.
So we don't have to
To some
party.
extent,
Well,
not
like
that
them.
he.
No, that's okay. But at the same time, imagine we have to preach also. It is more difficult actually.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
It's more difficult. I mean, it's easy, in a way, it's easier just to sit at home and chant. But to go out within the public, remain friendly to them, preach to them, and not get affected by them.
Very difficult, Prabhuji. उस समय कंट्रोल करना अपने आप को is very difficult. You get annoyed
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. True.
Krishna will give all the intelligence. Prabhupada is there to help us.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Manta. Thank you. Okay, so I guess we can stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Jai
Jai
Shri Prabhupada.